Hello and welcome back to Healing with Brittany. Today is February 11th. It is probably a little after 5:30 in the morning, and this is going to be the second video of a Carnivorous Diary where I am transitioning from a standard American diet to the carnivore diet as I attempt to lose 100 pounds so that I can reclaim a healthy, strong body, all the benefits that come from it. So right off the bat, some of the things I would like to actually mention is that first, the beautiful kitty right here is my 14-year-old cat, Caesar. He's likely to show up in several videos. He likes to stick close to my side. Another thing I want to kind of mention is that I have this right here, which has some notes and stuff. Not the first page. It's a couple pages in. But they're largely over a couple of aspects that I kind of want to discuss. I'm not very good at memorizing scripts, so it kind of helps me to have just a couple of little things I kind of want to address as I'm going, for the sake of being able to keep things on track and be able to know that I'm talking about things I should be talking about. And on a third aspect is I have a couple of pictures I'm going to be showing that are going to come more into the picture during the history of my health. And so those are a couple of things I wanted to mention. So as I begin, one thing I would like to say is that I would like to thank all of the kind people who took the time to watch my last video and leave the comments. So far I've managed to read all of them as the moment of this recording, and I am so very happy so many of you had such kind words and encouragement to give, and I hope all of you the best as well. So kind of going in a little further, one of the first things I do want to mention is that when we are moving into a diet, one of the first things that we do need to be aware of is that where we are at currently is generally the direct result of actions and choices we have made throughout our life. I did not get to be 260 pounds at the beginning of February by doing good things for my body. I got to that weight because I made a lot of poor choices, and I had issues, and I still have issues with impulse control and binge eating, which kind of ties into some of my history. So the very first section I want to mention is the history of my health. So when I think about my health, I think about that there are two phases in my life. There is pre-graduation, which is from my birth in 1993 all the way up till the end of 2012. And that's what I have on this little page. It's one's pre and other parts after. But when it comes to pre-graduation, it all begins with childhood. For each and every one of us, our stories begin with us as children. And on my end, I wasn't always overweight. As a child, I was fairly active, I was healthy, I moved around a lot, I was curious, I still am curious. But I spent a lot of my childhood biking around town, going to the river, going to a couple of local state parks where I would spend good portions of my day climbing rocks bigger than my house and chasing my sister around and playing in like the jungle gyms and stuff. You know, a lot of things that a lot of children typically do during their childhood. But following my childhood, my early childhood, one thing that can be said is that I've always been a picky eater. I've never really liked eating vegetables. I was pretty much adverse to them from a very young age, which is typical of my entire lifespan. I did and still do like some fruits, and I wasn't a very big fan of anything like beans or nuts or anything. I typically tended to avoid them overall. Now, moving from my childhood into basically my preteen years and my high school years, I know a lot of my weight was managed in that time period because from kindergarten all the way up to my years as a senior, physical education was a requirement for every year and for every semester that I was going through. And so going through school, I was fairly active. We did dynamic and passive stretching. Dynamic stretching before any physical activity in gym generally followed by the gym teacher encouraging us to do passive stretching. And I do believe that this really helped keep my weight under control. And during a lot of my teenage years is when a lot of issues that I do have were really kind of brought to the forefront. It's when my depression really started manifesting, probably right around the time I was 14. And a lot of that was I was feeling isolated, I was a little unhappy, and I was starting to kind of feel disconnected from other people. And part of it kind of deals with seeing how a lot of my peers were moving through their lives. They were getting new interests. They were starting to develop interest in other people that were not platonic, and it was kind of confusing for me. That wasn't something I was interested in until I was about 27, and only for a very short amount of time. And one thing that was kind of big in my life is that I've always had very selective interests. Like, for example, one of the things I've always really been into is creative writing, creativity in general, the supernatural, the paranormal, things that kind of deal with the spiritual sides of nature, and a correlation between health that regards the physical body as well as the mental and the spiritual aspects of life. They're things that I've always been kind of interested in. I remember from like my childhood up to today, I have a tendency to watch like ghost stories or shows where they're doing like paranormal investigations on properties, and usually most of those where they're debunking the cases. I find them super fascinating. And in a lot of those situations, I'd be sitting on the couch all day, or at least part of the day as the show was going on when I had cable. And usually I'd be eating things that weren't exactly healthy. As a child, I had a tendency in the evenings to watch these shows while eating like ice cream or candy or something like that. And then when I got older, I transitioned to eating more like baked chicken covered in butter or something. And my family would often tell me that the excessive butter was extremely unhealthy, but I really like butter and I preferably like it salted. Towards the end of high school, my older sister got married and had her first child. And so there's been kind of like a lot going on from that end up till now, where there's 5 children, and I spend as much time as I can with them, and plan to be spending more time in the upcoming future to kind of dive deeper into their lives again as I kind of manage the depression that typically keeps me holed away inside a single room within my house. And then there was graduation, and then everything that happens after graduation. So the first couple of years after graduation, I was doing my first attempt at college, where I was going in for an English major, which I did not get because I am mathematically challenged. I could not get past intermediate algebra even after trying like 5 different times, and that's with and without tutors. But during that stage, the first year inside of my first college, physical education was required. So I took 2 gym physical education classes, a beginner's class followed by an intermediate's class, where I was doing like walking around the track that was inside the building, doing some of the weight works. I was doing something with weights. I can't really think of what it's called off the top of my head. But following that, I also was often, after I was doing the courses with like the actual inside the gym aspect, I'd go down to the sub level into the pool and swim for about an hour, which is something I really enjoyed, and it's something I actually ended up doing again when I went to business college in 2018 to 2019 when I was going into massage therapy. But between the 2 colleges that I went to, there was this long stretch of time where I wasn't in school, I wasn't being physically active, and that's when my weight really started getting further and further along, to the point that I ended up gaining a lot of weight. And that was followed by a lot of the joint pain, the fatigue, insomnia, the depression, and more of me holding myself up inside of a room where I was just largely spending most of my time working on a computer or sleeping on the days where the insomnia wasn't bothering me. So sometimes I sleep too much, sometimes I can't sleep at all. I kind of ping pong between the two. There isn't really a middle area, just one or the other. And it was during my time in college, for the second time in a business college, that I ended up going to therapy after my uncle and my mom, who's actually my grandmother, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that was kind of a hard time in my life, where a lot of the things that I had relied on, the structure that I relied on, and that helped me get from day to day, started buckling until it essentially just fell away. And it fell away after my ma died after fighting against an extremely aggressive strain of pancreatic cancer for 2 years, which was about, well, that was 3 years ago. She died in July of 2020. And from about that moment on, I've been more or less kind of living on my own, except for a very short period after she had died. I had lived with my boyfriend, who is now my ex, but I had lived with him for a while, and then I ended up moving into my dad and stepmother's house after they moved away. And this last year, I've been diving a little into understanding the carnivore diet and figuring out how to really approach it in a sustainable way that actually benefits me as an individual, along with a lot of the things I'm doing. So during the actual therapy thing, as I mentioned in my last video, I was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, anxiety, and a binge eating disorder. And those are all different things that are kind of playing into my life, while also kind of playing into the fact that I do have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which came into full swing in the year of 2016, when my cycles completely stopped altogether after going for maybe 6 to 7 months between periods. So health-wise, I have quite a big history, and there is a history of like obesity, high blood pressure, heart issues, and type 2 diabetes inside of my family, along with issues with depression, anxiety, and other mental disturbances that most of the people in my family have suffered through. With that said, so the next thing is like kind of talking about where I am today, my health as it is right now. And so I did do carnivore a little bit last year from March up to about June. I did it as a trial run. I had seen a lot of videos and I've heard a lot about it being able to help a lot of different conditions, and I wanted to kind of give it a try for myself. So I tried it for a couple of months, and couple of the things that did happen during that time is that a lot of my skin issues that I have that kind of play into like some of my joint pain, my fatigue, and a lot of other issues I'm having, along with the scaly rash I typically tend to get, which is kind of on the recovering side at the moment. I wanted to see if the carnivore diet would help with that, and it did. Then I fell off the wagon and I just didn't get back on until I decided that this year I really wanted to commit full scale to it and start transitioning from the standard American diet to the carnivore diet. With that in mind, and if I can actually find, so I did have a little notepad around here somewhere. I found it. A second little one I have that has my starting weight as well as my measurements. So at the very beginning of February, I had measured my weight, and it was at 260 pounds, putting me roughly at 100 pounds overweight. And while I didn't do my measurements at the very start of the month like I intended to, after I uploaded my first video, I went through and took my measurements. I'm not entirely sure if I did it correctly, but I'm 80% sure I did it right. But my measurements are written in here. And so for my measurements for around my neck, it's 15.5 inches. My bust is at 47. right beneath the bust is at 34. My waist is at 44, my hips are at 52, my thighs are at 29, and my arms are at 17. And when it comes to my thighs and my arms, there was about 0.5 difference between one arm to the next, but they were roughly the same in between for me, which is a good thing, because them being not roughly the same would have likely driven me crazy. And on a kind of a final thing, for like the history aspect, some of the things I kind of want to show that I'm actually kind of striving to get back to. So the first is an actual picture that shows my hair when it was actually longer, which is one issue that I've been having a hard time with. It's getting my hair to grow past a certain length and to get it to stop falling out in large quantities. And one picture I have that actually shows my hair actually being semi-long is this one right here. It's a picture of me and my mama. And you can also see kind of like the difference in my face between this version, past version of me, and now. And between the two, in one of them, my face is a lot more angular, it's thinner, it's not as inflamed, I don't really have any of the skin issues that I have today, and it isn't as flushed. And in this picture, I might be wearing a bit of lip stain and eyeliner, but I am not wearing foundation. I've never liked foundation because remembering to wipe it off at nighttime is something that I typically don't remember to do. And then some years later, another one that actually shows like my weight and the differences between now and today is this picture here with me and my sister during her wedding. And I was a lot skinnier. The dress size, I believe, was like a 14 to a 16 that I could fit in at the time. And nowadays I can't even fit into a 22 dress from some of the stores that I occasionally visit, and most time I don't even bother trying. And then the last photo is at my sister's reception, where again you can see me and my best friend at the reception. And I'm bringing this particular picture up because the friend in question is also thinking about transitioning into a more carnivore based diet, so that the two of us will be supporting each other as we are going through our respective journeys to lose weight. We're about the same weight now. We're from when I first weighed at the beginning of the month to now, I've lost about 5 to 6 pounds. So we're both in like the 250s to 260s. And so we're both looking to lose weight and kind of supporting each other on that particular journey, though the conditions we're dealing with are very much different. So in the next part of this particular video, the reason I have chosen carnivore to stick with it full time is because I did already have very good results with it the first time for a few months, where my skin had cleared up, I had a lot more clarity, and I was actually starting to sleep better. I have also heard a lot of people talking about how it helps with like different autoimmune disorders, it helps with depression, and that it can help with a whole host of other issues that I can't really recall off the top of my head. And so that kind of leads into one of the last sections of this video, and that's going to be my goals for the following week and on, which on my end, so a couple of things that I do want to say is that I am reading all of my comments in my videos, and I am going to attempt to answer as many of them as I can. And a couple of the people had kind of reminded me that some of the things to kind of focus and remember is doing a lot of walking throughout the week and intermittent fasting. And I already do a little bit of fasting, but I haven't been doing it like I should, so I'd really like to get back on schedule with that and try to walk a little bit every single day. I do want to get to the point where I can actually ride my bike comfortably, and that's going to have to wait until the weather gets a little bit better. I also want to start implementing stretching and kind of working on my flexibility and getting my joints more lubricated and mobile so that I can get around a little bit easier and kind of help with the pain. And on a final thing, that I really want to focus on the next week, that I keep kind of falling off the bandwagon, is actually eating more eggs and salmon. I have both, and I have a tendency to kind of forget that I have them. And eggs, as far as my experience goes, does help with IBS when it comes to being on the carnivore diet. I have a tendency to have loose stools, and when I eat eggs, it seems not to be really an issue for me. So with all that said, this is the end of my first week. It is a little after, it's a couple of days after my first video, but I did start transitioning into a carnivore diet at the beginning of this month, and I plan to be slowly moving deeper and deeper into a more carnivore based diet as the month goes on. So with that said, I'd like to thank all of you for watching and taking the time to actually comment on my videos. If you do like my video so far and would like to kind of keep up to date, please smash the like button, subscribe to my channel for future videos that are going to be coming out, and overall, just kind of leave a comment down below so we can all kind of talk to one another and we can encourage and support each other in our respective journeys. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. It is fairly early where I'm at, and I have a lot of things to be planning. So until next time, have a nice day.